Mayor Prince is here. Good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Are you excited all for the 4th of July celebration?
Well, I think we're probably all excited, but perhaps a little muted. But I am looking forward to having some fun after a whole bunch of work, and I think people probably feel that way a little bit too.
Sure.
I know we got fireworks tonight.
Yes.
On the 2nd of July. And heard a few comments out there, but I do want to just give out a great shout out to the Bemidji Jaycees.
Yeah, they do a great job.
They do, and I don't always know if our community realizes it's 100% volunteer, 100% donations, and I know they had some issues with their vendor, which is what caused the fireworks change. Certainly wasn't something that they planned on, but sometimes things happen and you adapt. So if you're going to give me the choice between no fireworks or fireworks on July 2nd, I say let's celebrate on the 2nd. And maybe it's a little bit of, hey, we celebrate it because we made it through the storm.
Yeah.
Right?
A twofold.
And
it sounds like there's some showers and activity on the 4th of July, so all worked out.
Yeah, so far, so good. And we probably should make a public service announcement that they will be testing the sirens today because it's that time of the month, the first Wednesday. And so you will hear sirens at 1 o'clock today is my understanding. So, given what just happened, I could see where that would be, if you heard that siren, you pay extra special attention if you're not remembering that it's a test today. So, yeah.
Good reminder. Sure, the dispatch will be inundated with calls as soon as that siren goes off.
It's never good when the radar has colors on it on the first Wednesday.
No, it's not. And, then the other thing, of course, is, it's all pretty recent memory for people. So I'm sure you hear that siren, it's going to cause you to remember some things, for many of us, unpleasant things.
You were in last week. Since then, have you and the city found any damage you didn't know about last week?
Oh, I think we're still finding that, our buildings as a city were kind of the last to be looked at based on everything else we had going on, especially staff. So they've had an opportunity to go through it building by building. And I know yesterday as a city, we had really our very first long, intense meeting with our insurance folks. And, for people who don't know the insurance side of it, the city of Bemidji, along with the majority of cities in the state, participate in the League of Minnesota Cities Insurance Trust, which is an insurance pool, which is a little different than an insurance company. So the profit motivation isn't there, and you're basically a member. So this isn't a great comparison, but think of it as a co-op, right? So, in order for the trust to have long-term longevity, it can't have members coming and going. It's very vested in having members being there long-term. So, the history of the trust is that, they treat people pretty fairly when claims are being worked through because, again, there isn't a profit motivation. And I think we talked about this some time ago. Coincidentally, I was appointed to the board of directors as a trustee for the insurance trust about 3 months ago. So obviously I can't be involved in this claim because that would be a conflict of interest. But it's pretty interesting now because I know quite a bit about the trust from, the last 3 months that I otherwise wouldn't have known. So anyways, the city met with the trust yesterday. I was not involved in that for obvious reasons, and a lot of conversations about, what's this all going to look like. So as everybody starts digging themselves out and doing repairs and getting insurance, city's no different. We're doing the same thing.
Is it blanket coverage for anything that is city-owned?
Yeah, it's all one claim. So I think that's what's helpful. It's like you don't have one claim here and one claim there and one claim there. This was one event, so you have one claim and one deductible. But as a city, once you get to repair, you have some obligations on how you get bids and how you choose vendors and things like this. So it requires a little bit more coordination than you would as a homeowner per se, because there's a bid process and how we get quotes and all of that kind of stuff. So that's all being worked on right now too. So,
And the Sanford Center is included in that, even though it has a separate contract for who runs it and who takes care of it?
Still a city-owned building. Yeah. So it will be part of that claim.
In a roundabout way, no pun intended, since we are Roundabout Alley. I didn't mean it as roads here, but Is that maybe a good thing that the Sanford Center is included? Because it's going to, yes, it's going to be a higher number, but that also then kicks in more potential reimbursement from the state and from other entities?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, anything that's part of public infrastructure, which would also include the Sanford Center, is going to be part of any type of reimbursement you receive from the state. It's great to have a good insurance policy on it, as we do, all of those kinds of things. So, yes, recovery from a financial side should be a little better over there. The downside, of course, is that we're all on a time crunch. You know, we've got pretty significant damage to the arena roof, and we should have first ice in there end of August because, you know,
Sure, yeah.
women's and men's hockey starts gearing up. Will we hit that timeline? I hope so. I don't have any information right now to tell me we won't, but that's the one thing. So, yes, you've got some insurance and you can do certain things, but you still have an obligation to your tenant to have ice in there at a certain time, and if you don't, what happens? And what do they do? You know, so I don't want to get too far down that road because immediately that prompts, well, what's the answer? Well, we haven't fully defined the question yet, you know, so you don't want to get too far ahead of it. But these are the kinds of things that, you know, sit in my brain. We were just having a meeting of the Sanford Center Advisory Board, and I'm the chair of that board. And these are the things we were discussing last Wednesday with Bobby. So, you know, it's that constant shift. So first we go from having an emergency center where people are getting meals and spending the night. Then it becomes a resource center. Then we actually had a wedding that was booked in the conference center. Best luck to that couple, and God bless them for their flexibility in all of this. Right. This probably wasn't the wedding they were planning. And then as soon as that happened, now we start talking about repair and what are our obligations long term and what events do we have going between now and then. And that's all the stuff the Sanford Center staff's working through. So, you know, I think that's a really normal process that parallels what everybody's going through, you know, as these days start unwinding. I can't believe that we're sitting here already on July 2nd. That's amazing to me. I mean, before we know it, this month's going to be over.
Yeah.
I mean, 4th of July and all this stuff, we're going to wake up, it's going to be middle of July. This is just, right?
Are you still surprised at how far we've come in a really, really short period of time?
Yeah, and you know, I can't say enough about our community. I mean, I'm going to keep saying that for years because I'm just completely amazed. Everywhere you go, there's a group, there's an entity, there's a person that's doing something to help the community recover and move forward. And it's because of that spirit, that commitment, that we are where we are. You know, yes, the city has a role. City staff have done a great job. County staff, state staff, I can say all of that. But it's the general community. I mean, I'm still seeing Facebook posts of people that say, I have a bobcat, I have a chainsaw, I'm going to be in Bemidji for 2 days. If you need help, you know, message me. Okay. You know, that's not the city. That's not the county. I see the folks.
It's not even people that live here.
No, exactly. They're not even citizens of our city. And, you know, I've seen what Lukens has done. I've seen what the Salvation Army's done. I've seen what the Red Cross has done. I see what United Way's doing, community. You know, I almost hesitate to start naming people and organizations because I'm going to miss it. You know, and the other thing I don't want to lose sight of is in our community, there are organizations who have been doing this every week for years. You know, last night I spent some time at the community table over at Mount Zion. Those folks have been providing community meals every week for years, and they did so yesterday. You know, so we've got all these new resources plus those resources in our community who have been doing the same thing, you know, year after year after year, and it's all of that coalescing, coming together. Well, that's why we are where we are. And you know, let's start at the beginning. I'm always going to say thank you, God, for the fact that there isn't anybody who lost their life. And we're all here to, you know, actually rebuild together. So, as I said, you know, I may sound like a broken record. That's okay. But that's what I'm going to be saying, I think, for years to come, because I really am overwhelmed with thankfulness.
Let's chat about some good news. Nielsen Reese Arena has been on a lot of people's radar of, we need to do something. We're not sure what. Do we actually finally have a what?
I think we're very, very close.
Oh, good.
So we had a proposal by a group of youth sports folks come and want to turn that into an indoor sports arena that could be multi-purpose and used for various things. And those organizations came together and formed another governing organization called the Bemidji Indoor Sports Commission, BISC. More acronyms, right? But they got a $250,000 grant from the Nielsen Foundation, and they want to go in there and start working and renovating that. So you can have soccer in there, you can have some baseball in there, you can have some softball in there. It can be a place where people can train and do some sports. And so they need to execute a lease with the city, but at our last work session, which seems, years ago, they came and they presented, and I think our council is very agreeable to that idea. And, we're talking about a real, low dollar lease to help them out over there because they're going to be making some investment. But I think that may very well be on the council agenda on Monday for approval. So if they get the green light on that, they're ready to go, which I think is a fabulous use of that space.
Yeah.
I would assume that building is paid for and in the clear by the city after all these years.
Yeah, that building has an interesting history because you might recall the curling club, right, built their portion, I think, of that whole thing and donated it to the city back in the 60s. And so that's an old building, so there's been a lot of upkeep. I don't think we owe anything on it, and I think that's why this is a good partnership, because that BISC group is going to be doing the work they need to do to make it usable. We're providing it at a very low cost, and it's going to do something for our community that is going to be good for kids. So, in my book, that's a win-win.
Transition in then now to the Parks Department.
Yeah.
Has this been on Rich's radar or the council's radar or your radar at all?
Well, I think the idea of efficiency has been on all of our minds for a while. And certainly, I think Rich wanted to come into this job, spend some time, understand some things, see all the moving parts, and start making some decisions about how to realign things. So I think Parks and Rec is a piece of that. And what we're talking about specifically is breaking it up into two departments, one specifically Parks, one specifically Recreation. And I think his idea behind that is to put focus on each so we can truly analyze each and see how efficient each is running and how we might be able to leverage other resources. So, when you look at the Parks Department, they plow out and maintain our park system, our trails, those kinds of things. Well, over here you have Public Works that does that same function for our roads and parking lots and things. Is there some synergies there that could maybe happen? So I think those are the kinds of things that he's looking at. And there's also the part of rec. I think rec will probably have to be thought about in a little different term. And again, these are my thoughts that I'm sharing with you. I'm not saying they're Rich's or anybody else's, but with the YMCA coming to town at some point, they do a lot of rec. What kind of partnerships are there? Are there more partnerships with folks like community ed, those kinds of things? Because there's a lot of people in our community who do rec. And so when I say focus, I think it's both from a programmatic side and also from a dollars and cents side. How can we get efficient? And so he has made that decision. And our charter, right, empowers the city manager to run the administration of the city. As a council, we make the policy decisions, so we don't hire and fire department heads. We don't assign duties as to who's going to do what. That falls under the city manager. So he's within his purview to say, I want to reorganize. And so he's moved forward on that. And we're also having some conversations about the legal department as well.
What are those conversations entailing?
Well,
adding? Because it seems like you'd never have enough.
Well, I think how we've been operating, I think, for about the last 6 months now, roughly 6 months, is that we've contracted out all the civil work, and we've had our in-house city attorney focused on prosecution on the criminal side. And I think what Rich shared during the last work session is he'd like to keep that arrangement long term. And so, again, most of that falls under his purview, but if we were going to have a long-term contract for civil attorney's work, the council would have to approve those dollars. And so I think that's what's coming before the council on Monday, is to have that discussion. Now, for me, I kind of like that idea personally, because we have so many different areas of civil law that we deal with as a city. honestly, it's hard to have one person who's a specialist in all of that. And often we end up contracting with other resources in any event to get that specialization. Because obviously, when you're selling property, that looks one way. When you're buying property from the railroad, that looks another way. When you're dealing with a lawsuit, that looks a different way. When you're dealing with annexation, it's hard to have somebody who's an expert in all of those fields. Sure. And then also, our city attorney in the past has had to wear multiple hats. They're the city attorney. They have also been the attorney for the airport commission. They've been the attorney for the merit hearing board, for the charter commission. And so whatever happens if you have two of those groups in conflict, what do you do with that? I mean, what if you get to a point where the airport doesn't agree with the city and the attorney is the same person for both, right? So these are just some of the complications. And so from my standpoint in analyzing what Rich is bringing forth, I can understand why he would make that recommendation. In my world, one of the things I believe you can always do is you can try something. And if it doesn't work, you can change it. You're not obligated to stick with it forever. So some of these changes, I think, well, they fall under his jurisdiction. I have confidence in his ability as a city manager. I'm willing to support some of these things and then analyze. And if we get down the road a year from now and it's not working the way we all thought, what's to prevent us from going back or making a different change? Nothing. So, that's kind of how I tend to look at these things. Sometimes you got to try something different so you get a better result. And if you don't, well, you can always pivot.
Quite honestly, don't you almost need one person that just knows the city charter forward and backward and up and down and left and rights just to make sure that a decision the council is making is allowable? Because wouldn't that be one of the biggest problems, is you're making a decision that goes against the charter and you don't know it?
Yeah, and I think that's actually one of the benefits of having that contracted out is you've got attorneys that work with charters everywhere. And so they're pretty familiar with charter language. Obviously, yours is specific. But yeah, and the charter's really not that long, and its governing principles aren't that complicated. But I sometimes wonder historically how often people have looked at that document. And true. For me, it establishes our, council, city manager form of government. And I've said for a while, I think at some point it's in the best interest of the city. And when I say the city, I mean the citizens of the community, to look at that form of government and say, is it still working for us? Is it working the way we want it to work? Because there are many different types of government structure for local municipalities that can be used. Again, I'm not here to advocate for change per se, but at some point as a community, you should look at that, because as your community grows, it has different needs. And so, is the charter and that form of government working for us today like it did 50 years ago when we first started this? So I don't know what the magical number is. Do you look at that every 20 years? Or I don't know what the number is, but I think periodically you should. And I think it also has the benefit of people understanding how the government actually works, because not everybody does. There are some people who have expectations of myself or the city council to do certain things that are not within our purview, and vice versa. So even if you brought the community through a process of understanding what it is and asking the question, is this still working for everybody? Just that education piece that you would get out of it, I think, has some value. But again, these are my thoughts because we're talking about the charter. Don't know that everybody else on the council or on the charter commission would share that same point of view.
Well, you got any 4th of July weekend stuff you do? Tradition? Always do?
Yeah, but I don't know if we're going to do that this year, to be perfectly honest. I mean, we usually do a pretty big grill out and get everybody together and do that kind of stuff. And we're still kind of deciding that, or it might look a little different, because everybody's kind of dealing with their own situation. And I know some of my own family members will use this time to keep working on their homes and yards and things like that. So I'm not 100% sure. Always go to the fireworks, but usually that's on the 4th. We just said it's on the 2nd. I think we're going to go, but it creates, because of those kinds of things. But the one thing we typically all do, and I anticipate we will do this year, is get out to the Grand Parade.
There you go.
And, I kind of think as a community, we all need something fun to do. We could all use a little bit of a break. Parade sounds like a good way to do that, and I'll be in it, so I'm hoping to see a hunk of our community out, although I will understand if there's some folks at home still trying to dig themselves out.
Well, thanks for stopping by like you always do the first Wednesday of the month.
Well, absolutely. I appreciate that. And, we'll all just keep plugging away together.
You have a great 4th of July weekend, Mayor.
Thank you. You
Good
guys
morning.
too.